Nobody saw who paid the journalist's hospital bill, but when he found the receipt 3 weeks after his surgery, he collapsed. For 8 years, he'd written every lie he could find. Now the man he tried to destroy had saved his life. David Kramer made his name in tabloids, his specialty, celebrity takedowns, and he had one target he returned to over and over, Michael Jackson. It started in 1995 with a column about a canceled concert. The facts didn't matter. David's editor wanted scandal, so David delivered. He twisted a scheduling conflict into a story about erratic behavior and broken promises. The piece went viral before viral was even a word. His career took off. The editor called him into the office the next day, grinning, and told him it was gold. "Keep going," he said. David didn't need to be told twice. After that, every headline was sharper, every story more vicious. Child star gone wrong, eccentric recluse, dangerous celebrity. David didn't care if the sources checked out. Anonymous tips became facts. Rumors became evidence. He cared about clicks. And Michael Jackson's name got clicks. His colleagues warned him he was crossing a line. But David didn't listen. He told himself he was just doing his job. That famous people signed up for this, that the truth didn't matter as long as the story sold. He bought a new car with his bonus that year. He didn't think about what it cost, but Michael never responded. Not once. By 2003, David's byline was everywhere. His attacks on Michael intensified during the trial. David wrote op-eds questioning his sanity. He appeared on TV panels suggesting guilt before the verdict. He built an entire brand on tearing one man apart. His apartment walls were covered with clippings of his own work. Every brutal headline, every accusation. He told himself it was pride. But late at night, when he couldn't sleep, he knew it was something else. Proof. Proof that he mattered. That his words had power. And when the trial ended in acquittal, David didn't apologize. He doubled down. He wrote that the system had failed, that justice hadn't been served. His editor loved it. His audience ate it up. But Michael never responded. Not once. No lawsuits, no public statements. Just silence. David told himself that meant he was right. That silence was guilt. He kept writing, kept attacking, and the money kept coming. His ex-wife left him in 2006. She said he'd become someone she didn't recognize, someone cruel. He didn't argue. He just signed the papers and went back to work. Until 2008, when everything changed. Then his body started breaking down. David started feeling tired. At first, he ignored it. Deadlines didn't wait for rest. But the exhaustion got worse. He'd fall asleep at his desk, wake up with his face pressed against his keyboard. Then came the chest pains, sharp pressure that radiated down his left arm. He was at his desk when the first one hit. Sharp. Sudden. He gripped the edge of his desk and waited for it to pass. His vision blurred. The pain lasted 30 seconds. Then it stopped. He sat there, breathing hard, telling himself it was stress. But 2 days later, it happened again. This time, he couldn't breathe. His assistant found him on the floor. Paramedics arrived in 6 minutes. The ER doctor didn't sugarcoat it. Heart disease. Advanced. David needed surgery. Soon. David nodded. His mouth was dry. He could barely focus. He asked about the cost. The doctor's face said everything. Without insurance, he was looking at $180,000. Maybe more. David's stomach dropped. He'd burned through his savings years ago. Tabloid money came fast, but it never stayed. He lived paycheck to paycheck, chasing the next story. High rent in Manhattan, expensive habits, nothing left. Now there was no next story, just a hospital bed and a bill he couldn't pay. He called everyone he knew, friends, family, former colleagues. Nobody picked up. Or if they did, they made excuses. He'd attacked too many people, made enemies. Now he was alone. One former friend laughed before hanging up, muttering something about karma. David sat in his apartment staring at the surgery estimate. The procedure was scheduled for March 2009. He had 6 weeks to come up with the money, or he wouldn't make it to summer. The walls felt smaller every day. David tried everything. He pitched stories to his old editors. They all said no. His reputation was toxic. Nobody wanted his name on their site. He started a crowdfunding page. It raised $340 in 2 weeks. Most of the comments were cruel. He deleted the page. He applied for financial aid at the hospital. Denied. Too much income on paper, they said. Never mind that it was all gone. By mid-February, he'd given up. He sat on his couch one night and thought about calling his ex-wife. But he couldn't. She'd told him years ago that his cruelty would catch up to him. He didn't want to hear her say she'd been right. Then, 2 days before the surgery, his phone rang. It was the hospital billing department. The voice informed him there'd been a development. His balance was $0. Someone had covered it. The full amount. David's hands shook as he asked who. The hospital couldn't say. The donor had requested anonymity. David insisted it didn't make sense, but the voice stayed calm. They didn't have that information. He just needed to be there Monday morning at 6 a.m. David spent the weekend in a fog. He walked through Central Park trying to understand. He'd burned every bridge, hurt everyone who'd ever trusted him. Who would save him now? He made a list of possibilities, old friends who might still care, distant relatives. None of it made sense. By Sunday night, he'd convinced himself it was a mistake, that the hospital would call Monday morning and say they'd made an error. But they didn't. The surgery went well. David woke up groggy but alive. The anesthesia made everything feel distant. He could hear voices, machines beeping, someone adjusting his IV. The surgeon said he'd been 12 hours away from a massive coronary. Whoever had paid for the surgery had saved his life. The doctor asked if David knew who it was. David shook his head. He had no idea. For 3 weeks he tried to find out. He called the hospital every day. They wouldn't tell him. He hired a lawyer to request the donor's name. The request was denied. Whoever it was had locked the information down tight. David started having nightmares. Someone standing in the shadows, watching, waiting. The man he'd destroyed had saved him. David was back in his apartment when the envelope arrived. It was plain. No return address, just his name and apartment number. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a receipt, dated March 2009. Payment in full, $183,627. And at the bottom, a signature, handwritten, clear, Michael Jackson. David's legs gave out. He sat on the floor staring at the paper. This wasn't possible. Michael Jackson was the man he'd spent 8 years destroying, the man he'd called dangerous, unstable, guilty, and that man had saved his life. David didn't sleep that night. He read the receipt over and over, hoping it would change, hoping it was fake. But the hospital confirmed it the next morning. That was the donor. It was legitimate. The woman on the phone sounded impatient, asking if there was a problem. David hung up. He couldn't eat, couldn't think. He sat in his apartment for days, staring at the receipt. Every article he'd ever written came back. Every lie, every twisted fact. He'd told the world Michael was a monster, and Michael had saved him. The guilt was suffocating. He tried to write an apology. He got 3 sentences in and deleted it. What could he possibly say? David spent the next week in shock. He didn't leave his apartment. He didn't answer calls. He just sat there, replaying every article he'd written, every lie, every cruel headline. And he realized something that made him sick. Michael had known. He'd known who David was, what David had done, and he'd helped him anyway. That wasn't just mercy. It was something David had never understood. Grace. Then the door opened. 3 weeks later, David flew to Los Angeles. He didn't call ahead. He just went. He'd found out through a contact that Michael was rehearsing for a comeback tour. David waited outside the rehearsal venue for 6 hours. Security told him to leave twice. He refused, insisting he just needed 5 minutes. They threatened to call the police. David stayed. Then, just after midnight, the door opened. and Michael walked out. David's throat closed. He stepped forward, his voice cracking as he called out. Michael stopped. He looked tired. His eyes were shadowed, but calm. David took another step and said he needed to talk. Michael glanced at his security team, then nodded. He told them to give him a minute. They stepped back. David's hands trembled. He didn't know how to start. Michael waited. David's voice broke as he apologized. The words felt too small, too weak, but they were all he had. He confessed everything, 8 years of lies, destroying Michael's name, not caring if it was true, just wanting the story. And when David was dying, Michael had saved him. Michael's face didn't change. David's eyes filled as he asked why. Why would Michael do that? Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. His voice was soft, tired, because David had needed help, and Michael could give it. David dropped to his knees. The pavement was cold. He didn't care. He said he didn't deserve this, didn't deserve Michael's mercy. Michael looked down at him. His expression was unreadable. He said maybe David didn't, but that wasn't how mercy worked. He paused. David could spend the rest of his life hating himself, or he could do better. His choice. Then Michael turned and walked toward the car. David stayed on the pavement sobbing. Security helped him up a few minutes later. By then, Michael was gone. David never wrote another tabloid story. He left journalism entirely. He got a job teaching media ethics at a community college. He never spoke publicly about what happened. But every year, on the anniversary of his surgery, he sent a donation to a children's hospital. He signed it anonymous, just like Michael had. He kept the receipt in his wallet, a reminder of the day his life should have ended, and the man who gave him a second chance. When Michael died in June 2009, David didn't go to the memorial. He stayed home and cried, not for the icon, but for the man who'd shown him what grace looked like, even when it wasn't deserved, even when it wasn't returned. If this moved you, please like and subscribe. Would you forgive someone who hurt you this deeply?